had a delivery from New Zealand back to Palma, so that was my first delivery, and back to the dock where I started many years before. So that was an interesting evolution.
Yeah. So you started the, let's say, old-fashioned way.
Yep.
Took a plane, went to the dock, got your first job.
Pretty much, yeah.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. I am together with Captain Glen, and I'm delighted because Glen has promised us to share all his secrets on how he looks at crew, new crew, his team, and also at vendors and suppliers. Thank you so much, Glen, for spending time with us.
No, it's nice to be here. I don't know if I'm going to give you all my secrets, but you'll get a few of them anyway.
That's fantastic. It's so nice to be sharing. Glen, just before we get started, how long have you been in the industry?
Going back now 25 years, I guess, in round terms. I started in 1995 because I remember I had my 25th birthday when I just joined a boat by the name of Be Mine back in 95, and we were in Saint-Tropez for my 25th birthday. So that's I'm now 51, so yeah, 26 years now. I came overseas from Australia. Worked and lived in England, in Bath actually, doing some building restoration, and stumbled across an old girlfriend who was coming down to Mallorca to work on boats. And I was like, work on boats, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
And she told me about the industry, and I'd worked in Whitsundays in Australia when I was travelling around Australia. Had a little bit of experience. Decided that living and working in England wasn't a long-term solution, so I jumped on a plane, flew down here, and literally walking this dock where we stand here in Club de Mar, and got a job on a boat that was in Barcelona 3 days later, and then disappeared and worked on that yacht south of France, and moved around the place, changed boats 2 or 3 times, and the next time I came back here to Mallorca was bringing this boat back from New Zealand after the America's Cup in 2003. So I went from being a green deckhand walking the docks here to going through the apprenticeship of yachting, from a deckhand through first mate through to getting my captain's ticket, and then eventually had a delivery from New Zealand back to Palma. So that was my first delivery, and back to the dock where I started many years before. So that was an interesting evolution.
Yeah. So you started the, let's say, old-fashioned way.
Yep.
Took a plane, went to the dock, got your first job.
Pretty much, yeah.
Is that still how it works nowadays, do you think?
Oh, look, one of the things I find interesting with Brexit, and also with the current COVID crisis, is it's restricted movement in and around the industry. And a big feeder for this industry is the dock walkers. I mean, it's less and less liberated as it was in the past, but it's certainly
well, the compass came down, guys. Sorry about that. We'll just keep going.
But it's less liberal than it was in the past. It's a lot more structured. However, I think that avenue for entry into the yachting market is still very valid. The challenge I identified this year is that a big feeder for Mallorca and the industry down here, and also in France, the south of France, there's a lot of British expats who come down here. They get their basic training in the UK, and they come down and they go dock walking looking for work. Nowadays, it's a lot more challenging with the Brexit rules and the limited amount of time. So I asked the question back then, is there going to be a short supply of entry-level crew coming into the industry? Which I anticipate there probably is. But that approach to finding work is still valid. I mean, there's many and varied different approaches, whether you go through the crew agency or word of mouth. I often have a lot of people who I've worked with as contractors or previous crew who get in contact with me, and they say they've got a friend or a brother or a cousin or somebody who's entry level. Would I have a suggestion? Or would there be a position available? And I've employed some amazing crew members, entry level, even 19-year-olds on here, who've been introduced to me through colleagues and stuff like that, who are looking for a starting point. And we here on this boat, I really actively encourage young people to come on board in entry-level positions and show us what they got. And I've seen some crew members. I have one girl who worked on here, Alice, who's now captaining a boat, running around in the in the Greek islands, and she's on her first command, and she's so happy doing what she's doing. And a big part of her formation was working on here and understanding what the yachting industry is all about, plus the adventurous nature of what we do on this boat. So.
But because those are the great stories, right? Like the result that you get, and then that she's captain, that must be like,
Yeah.
feels good. But like I've just learned secret number one. Make sure you have a network of people that can introduce you, because as Glenn has just said, like he gets called by friends, by other people, by relatives, by suppliers, like I've got this great entry level crew member, is there a position there? So make sure that you mingle and that you network. I think that was one of your first secret I'm pulling out of you.
I think it does. I mean, I think crew agencies have a very important role in the industry. Albeit I would tend to go to the crew agencies not as a last resort, but it won't be my first point of call when I'm looking for someone. We on the boat here, we have a pretty good reputation in the industry in and around Palma, in the industry globally, and if we have a position available, or it gets filled pretty quickly. It's not often that I'm scratching the barrel looking for crew members. So, like I say, we've on here, as I mentioned to you before, I know we have a fairly strong core of crew on here, but I also understand that entry-level junior crew and sort of the first 2 or 3 rungs of the hierarchical ladder in yachting, they're the guys and the girls in the development stages. So change is sometimes really good for them, and on here unfortunately there's not a lot of steps to go, because there's people in place that have been here for many years. So you get to the point where you'll climb up the ladder of hierarchy and your experience and also responsibility. In order to continue with your career, you need to advance, you need to move on, you need to take on more responsibility, and sometimes that door's not open on here.
No, of course. And then you move outside, but like I always feel like I see that with my own team, like the day they move because they found this great new opportunity, and I've got that position because of the experience that they have with you. That makes you feel proud as well. It's a reward for all the hard work.
That's the feedback loop for me, the really positive feedback loop. And one of the things that people often ask me about the yachting industry is, it must be amazing going to Saint-Tropez and Monaco. I get so much more out of the industry from the human connection, and it's something that I've only realised probably in the last 10 years. Why is it I love what I do is because of problem solving, travelling, resolving issues, providing experiences. But the real thing is the human connection, and that's where I've probably evolved as a captain in the last few years. I used to be very authoritarian, and First Mate will probably reinforce that. Jamie will agree with me, because when I first started working with him 17, 18 years ago, when I was a First Mate on here, I was very matter of fact and very organised in my intention, and it was my way or the highway. I realised with time that that's not always the best approach to things, and I also realised that we're all human beings, and everyone has different triggers and mechanisms, different cultural backgrounds. One of the richest things about working in this industry, I think, is we're exposed to such a kaleidoscope of different cultural backgrounds, social backgrounds. I come from Australia, I've got people from Bulgaria, I've got people from France, I've got German, English, Kiwis. I've got a real mix of different nationalities, and everyone has a different cultural background, but also have a different socio-economic background, which means different formative years in their early days. And blending a crew in that environment where you've got so many different characters and so many different drivers in play, there's an art to it. There really is an art to it, and it's finding the personalities with the right work ethic, and also a degree of empathy, a degree of understanding, but also drive, and it's finding that balance of individuals to fit into this environment. There's an art to it, and there's a lot of joy. Going back to what you were saying, the feedback loop that I get, and I get people calling me for references and things like that, but the really amazing feedback is when I see people's careers advance to the point where they're running a boat. I mean, I had a deckhand here, a deckhand who started on here probably 2007, about when I took over as a captain on here. He's now running a 96 metre boat, unlimited, and we still have a really good contact. I have stewardesses, juniors. I even have crew members that I've had to dismiss, who have written back to me subsequent years later and explained to me how their experience on here was an incredible learning experience, and they have regret for letting it go, losing the opportunity, because I have to make some difficult decisions from time to time, and I do have to dismiss some crew members from time to time, not often. But when that happens, it's a difficult position to be, because it's a decision that you're making that's affecting someone else's life. But at the end of the day, they created the situation. And then they can reflect in future back on the situation that they're in and be grateful for the experience that they had, and also grateful for the fact that I gave them a push.
Sometimes you have to push people away to get them on the better path in life. And I don't. That's not always the reason that you might have done it. But let's circle back, because in the end, you're saying I've got all these cultures, I've got all these different people. So what do you do? So what do you do to mold them into a team that functions as well as you want it to function?
Oh, look, I'm sort of old school to the extent that I like to lead by example. I mean, when it comes to, look, I don't get my hands dirty these days, although I'll get out and show me down the rails if the guys need a hand. When I was a first mate, I would always lead by example. I'd work not necessarily harder, but I would focus on the job that needed to be done, and the expectations I had of other crew members in a position of authority as a first mate, I would not expect them to do anything I wasn't prepared to do myself. And I've done the full realm of climbing through tanks and anti-fouling and varnishing, and I know how to lay a coat of varnish. So I'm not going to sit here and criticise someone without being able to show them how to do it. So I guess my modus operandi is lead by example, first of all.
But that's your side. But what do you expect from them? There must be a certain personality trait, or because like they're qualified. Because otherwise you wouldn't hire them in the first place. So they're qualified, and whether they're at entry level or whether they're at senior level. But like, what do you look for? So you've got, like, if you look at that team that you have now, what makes them stand out? Which qualities?
It's really difficult in the interview process and when you're screening through CVs to really identify, apart from skill set or I'm interested in this, to identify personality. And that's why, I mean, I even do phone calls by WhatsApp or whatever, really just to see someone's face and see their body language. Given the amount of time I've had on here, I've made some mistakes and employed crew members that just weren't meant for the boat. But you learn from that. The big thing that I'm looking for, apart from the typical work ethic, presentation, all the bits and pieces, which are just a given.
This is the given.
The given, the skill set, qualifications, all that, which is all just part of the mechanics of being available for the work. The big thing that I look for really is, personality is really not the word that I'm looking for. I'm looking for the how their character is and how that will fit into the dynamic of the boat, because we have a very established dynamic, albeit dynamic by nature is an evolving thing. How are they going to fit in with the characters that I have on board? And I've got an acute awareness of who we have on board, and I can already read if that is going to be a clash by the nature of their character, and whether it be robust, opinionated, or whether it be meek and subservient. Even the meek and subservient fits into a certain role, but not necessarily on the role that I'm looking to employ. So for me, an interview process is really about using my skills, which I think I've developed over the time, but I've still got a long way to go, in determining whether that individual will fit in with the crew that we have and be able to serve the owners with the style of service that we're looking for. And it's very difficult to quantify what the characters are that count. For me, it's having a certain sense of self-confidence, but not being egotistical. Having the ability to communicate, like sitting in an interview situation and having the confidence to ask questions, whether it be asking about the salary or what are the conditions, or I'm not offended by someone saying how many, what's the holiday policy on board, or what's the health policy, because you're entitled to know that, and I'd expect you going into a role that you're asking the questions that are going to determine if you are suitable for the boat and if the boat is suitable for you, because it's a two-way thing.
It's a two-way thing.
Every time I have an interview, I often say, look, this is as much an interview for me I don't want you interviewing me, but ask the questions that are sitting around in your head, because you need to know if it's the right fit for you. One of the things that I sort of stand by in the interview process in screening people is like, I'll say, right, okay, interview's done, great. I want time to think about it, but also importantly, equally importantly, I want you to go away now and think about it for the next 24 hours. I don't want you to give me an answer now. I'm not offering you a job.
You do that as well. I do that as well. I hire people and I interview them and I tell them, okay, I am going to sleep on it, but I want you to sleep on it as well. I want you to come back to me to say what you feel. And people are surprised about that and ask that question because they're not used to that. But you do that as well.
Oh, always. I mean, for me, I never sit in an interview situation and sit someone down. I've got a couch in my office cabin. And we sit down, we have a conversation, and all right, tell me all the questions. If you've got any questions, any further questions, here's my contact details. Listen, I want you to go away for 24 hours and have a think about it. I know how I feel about the situation, but I want to sleep on it. I want to think about it. And then let's talk tomorrow. I'll be very candid if I think, look, it's really not going to work for you.
It's not going to work.
It's not going to work for you. Let's not waste any time. And also go away and think about, is this going to work for you long term, not just for the next two months or whatever. Generally, I'll have a time frame in my mind. This crew member I'm looking to fill in for the season, or this crew member I'm looking to engage for longer term with career prospects on the boat. I'm looking to engage them to become So I like to lay all that on the table in an interview process. Explain as much as I possibly can about the dynamic of the boat, the expectations that we have as crew members upon an incoming crew member, and then you go away and think about, are our expectations within your realm of performance, fundamentally, and also, do I feel like you have the credibility and also the intent and also the personality that'll fit in with our dynamic on board.
This is interesting. I mean, we're very much on the same page, and this is, I think every entry crew member or people that are looking to progress a career can really learn something from what Glenn has just told me. Glenn, you have what, 11 crew, 14 including rotation?
Yeah, we're 11 crew full time operationally, and then we run up to, we have 14 on the payroll.
So, and he's been around, so he knows. Listen, I was going to do 2 topics in this session, but I think we're going to do 2 sessions.
Oh, okay.
So this was session 1. Glenn, thank you so much for this. And the next session, which will be aired next week then, is that we're going to talk about how he selects his vendors and suppliers and the people he works with onshore, because I think Glenn will have a great story about it as well. So thank you for watching episode 1 with Glenn, and see you next week for episode 2 with Glenn.
We're going to do a whole series, are we?
We're going to do a whole series, Glenn. Thank you.